No barriers to sale. A few years into starting our digital agency, we had an opportunity to develop a website for a very large company. It was Toshiba. It's a great opportunity for our agency at the time. We were a relatively small agency, and the decision was being taken out of Dubai. Flew out on the overnight plane, prepared the pitch and the presentation on the plane. We talked about who we are, our values, how we work, and we talked about our understandings of their projects, and we talked about why we thought we would make a great partnership, and it was all going swimmingly into our design concepts and our technical ideas. It was absolutely brilliant. We were getting lots of positive signals. Right at the back end of the conversation, they went in to negotiate about money, and we were comfortable with the sorts of numbers that they were talking about, and we came to an initial agreement. And then right at the end, one of the finance executives from Toshiba started talking about a bond. So this is in effect an upfront deposit that a supplier would need to pay to a buyer for the luxury of winning the project. So this is something that in Dubai and the Middle East, is more common, although not normal. And it's something that in the UK, Europe, and most of the rest of the world is highly abnormal, certainly for a project of this type, a services project of this type. So I pushed back on this. I pushed back and said, it's not something that we could do. And as a result of that pushback, the atmosphere in the room dropped a little, and we left the meeting feeling somewhat disappointed but still hopeful we had done enough to win the work. We flew back from Dubai the following day back to London, and a few days later, lo and behold, we found that we were not successful. I spoke to some advisors of mine, and their advice was no barriers to sale, particularly during a pitch meeting of that type. And if I needed to negotiate away the deposit, it could have been done after the fact. It was the fact that I chose to do it in the pitch presentation worked against us, and ultimately was probably the driving factor in Toshiba not choosing us. And it was a tough lesson to learn, because that project was a huge one, and it would have been brilliant. So I felt very deflated. But the positive lesson that I took out of that experience was always remembering no barriers to sale. If a customer's asking you for something you can't deliver, I'm not saying you need to agree to it, but you don't need to overtly disagree. Or if you do need to do that, choose a time and a place wisely. What do you think about this idea of no barriers to sale? Let me know in the comments below.